Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2533 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, we're diving into Psalm 39 and focusing on verses 1 through 5 from the New Living Translation. This reflective psalm, attributed to David, wrestles with the themes of self-control, the brevity of life, and our dependence on God. David's words in this passage are raw, honest, and thought-provoking. They challenge us to examine our hearts and consider how we might live in light of the fleeting nature of life. Let's begin by reading the verses together. Psalm 39, verses 1 through 5. I said to myself, I will watch what I do, and not sin in what I say. I will hold my tongue when the ungodly are around me. But as I stood there in silence, not even speaking of good things, the turmoil within me grew worse. The more I thought about it, the hotter I got, igniting a fire of words. Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered, how fleeting my life is. You have made my life no longer than the width of my hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is but a breath. David begins the psalm with a firm resolution. I will watch what I do and not sin in what I say. I will hold my tongue when the ungodly are around me. David is keenly aware of the power of words and the potential that leads to sin. His decision to guard his speech reflects a deep desire to honor God, even in difficult circumstances. However, in verse 2, David describes the struggle of staying silent. But as I stood there in silence, not even speaking of good things, my turmoil within me grew worse. Holding his tongue, especially in the presence of the ungodly, creates an inner tension. It is as though his emotions are bubbling just beneath the surface, and his efforts to suppress them only intensifies the turmoil. Think about a teapot on a stove. As the water heats, the steam builds up pressure inside until it whistles. Similarly, David's silence creates an emotional buildup. His intention to remain silent is commendable, but it doesn't alleviate the inner struggle. This image reminds us that while it's wise to choose our words carefully, suppressing our communication can sometimes leave us feeling even more conflicted. David's internal struggle comes to a head in verse 3. The more I thought about it, the hotter I got, igniting a fire of words. His silence, though well-intentioned, ultimately gives way to the outpouring of emotions. The phrase, igniting a fire of words, captures the intensities of his feelings as they spill out to God in prayer. This verse illustrates a vital principle. When we are overwhelmed by emotions, whether anger, frustration, or sorrow, it is better to bring them to God than to let them fester. David's fire of words isn't directly upon the ungodly or those around him. It is directed to the Lord. In doing so, David models how to process difficult emotions in a way that leads to spiritual growth rather than sin. Have you ever been in a situation where you tried to keep your thoughts and feelings to yourself, only to find them boiling over in an unexpected moment? I remember a friend who once shared how he bottled up his frustrations at work, thinking it was best not to speak out. But one day, during a quiet time with God, everything came pouring out in prayer. He later realized that expressing those feelings to God brought him peace and clarity that he couldn't find by keeping them inside. Like David, we can find relief by bringing our struggles to the Lord. In verse 4, David shifts his focus to a heartfelt prayer. Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered, how fleeting my life is. David moves from an emotion of turmoil to the request for wisdom and perspective. He recognizes that his life is short and that understanding its brevity can help him to live with greater intentionality and purpose. This prayer reflects David's humility. He doesn't assume that he knows the best way forward. Instead, he asks God to remind him of a bigger picture by focusing on the brevity of life. David seeks to align his priorities with eternal values rather than getting lost in temporary frustration or distractions. Imagine standing on a mountaintop, looking over a vast landscape. The view puts everything into perspective. Your daily worries seem small compared to the grandeur before you. David's prayer is like asking God to take him to the mountaintop, where he can see life from a heavenly perspective. When we're caught up in the busyness of life, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. David's words remind us to regularly seek God's perspective and refocus our hearts on eternal priorities. David continues his reflection with verse 5. You have made my life no longer than the width of my hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is but a breath. Here, David uses a poetic imagery to convey the fleeting nature of life. His hand with, a moment, a breath. Each comparison underscores how short our time on earth truly is, especially when viewed in context of eternity. This verse reminds us that our lives, while precious, are also finite. Recognizing this truth can motivate us to live with intentionality, focusing on what matters most. It's not about dwelling on our mortality, but about using our time that we've been given wisely. I once read a story of a man who kept a jar full of marbles on his desk. Each marble represented 1 week of his life. Every Saturday, he would remove one marble as a visual reminder how quickly time passes. He said it helped him to prioritize what mattered, spending time with family, serving others, and pursuing his relationship with God. David's reflection on the brevity of life serves a similar purpose, reminding us to take focus on what is truly important. Psalm 39 verses 1 through 5 offers several powerful lessons that are deeply relevant to our daily lives. Let's take a closer look at these key themes. First of all, we need to be guarding our words. David's resolution to watch his speech highlights the importance of self-control. Our words have power, and choosing them carefully can prevent misunderstanding and sin. Second, bringing emotions to God. Suppressing emotions can lead to inner turmoil, but David shows us the value of directing our feelings to God. Honest prayer allows us to process our struggles in a healthy way. Third, seeking God's perspective. Life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but asking God to remind us of life's brevity helps us to refocus on what truly matters. When we see our days as part of God's eternal plan, we gain clarity and purpose. And fourth, the fleeting nature of life is a call to live wisely. Instead of wasting time on trivial matters, we can prioritize relationships, service, and our walk with God. How can we apply these lessons to our everyday lives? Well, here are a few practical steps. First, we need to practice self-control in our speech. Before speaking, take a moment to reflect whether our words will build up or tear down. When in doubt, follow David's examples and choose silence until you can speak with wisdom. Next, we need to develop a habit of honest prayer. Bring your struggles, frustration, and emotions to God in prayer. He already knows what's on your heart, and expressing those feelings to Him can bring peace and clarity to you. We also need to reflect on the brevity of life. Take time to consider how you're using the days that God has given you. Are your priorities aligned with His will? Use this reflection to make adjustments where needed. And finally, focus on eternal values. In a world full of distractions, keep your eyes fixed on what will last. Your relationship with God, your impact on others, and the legacy that you're building for eternity. As we reflect on Psalm 39, verses 1 through 5, let's take to heart David's example of self-control, honest prayer, and a focus on the eternal perspective. Life is short, but when we walk with God, every moment can be filled with purpose and meaning. Thank you for joining me today on our Wisdom Trek. As you go about your week, I encourage you to guard your words, bring your struggles to God, and live with intention. Remember, our days are brief, but they are precious gifts from the Lord. Until the next time, may God's wisdom guide your steps, and may His peace fill your heart. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. And thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. And as we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.